All right. All right. I think we're live. Going to test the sound out here just for a second. Make sure we got sound. This is something brand new that we're doing. Not sure. Not sure if we got sound or not. So you guys will have to let us know what's going on. And in the chat line. So anyways, and if we don't have sound, then we'll have to somehow figure it out. But this is my first time using the vertical chat. We usually do the horizontal chat. And so the theme tonight is the Sabbath of the Bible. Prove me if you think I'm wrong. And that's what we're going to do here. So the Sabbath has been an issue, an ongoing issue, especially with Israel for many, many millennia. By the way, here's my wife. She
Hello.
has joined us. And
nice to see everybody.
okay, pull that microphone right up to your mouth.
Oh.
Yeah. So, and here we go. So we're going to just continue to kind of move along here because I'm not even sure if we've got good sound yet. I know the signal's coming across because I can see it. So, so we're just going to continue to wait for you guys to hop on and let us know what's going on. But the Sabbath has been an issue for millennia, okay? And I know that Israel went into captivity because Israel refused to keep the Sabbath. And so this is something of contention. And now modern day Christians have now used the excuse that that Jesus is the fulfillment of the law. And they misinterpret and they misread where the Bible says that. The law that is actually being referred to as Jesus being the fulfillment of would be the sacrificial law. So Liza is here. Yeah, it works. Fantastic.
Hi, Liza.
So can you hear us okay, Liza? This is the first time we're trying to use this. I got everything all set up kind of awkward. My cameras are like this. My YOLO box. I'm looking at this from my monitor for my for my my live stream. It's not popping up on Lisa's. So yeah, everything's just a little bit weird and awkward here. So yes, perfect. Okay, fantastic. So, all right, big sigh of relief there. We got a good audio. We got our live stream coming across. And so let's see here. So we've got, we're going to pull the Bible up. Can you guys think of any Bible verses that would disprove the Sabbath being on Saturday or what we know as the seventh day of the week? Now, we know that the dictionary considers Saturday the seventh day of the week. If you look in a lot of the encyclopedias, especially the older ones, I don't know what the newer ones say, but anytime that we would look into the old encyclopedias, the seventh day Sabbath was clearly pointed out as being the seventh day or Saturday as we know it. And so, and if you look on a calendar, same there, the calendar will also show, but you know, Christians of old, now the arguments have changed over time. If you look at perhaps the arguments of, I don't know, 20, 30 years ago, I remember Hebrews 4 is a good one. And I remember the arguments of many years ago. They said, well, we don't really know what day is what. And some people would say, well, you know, when Joshua caused the sun to stand still, that moved it from Saturday to Sunday, there was all kinds of reasons why people would not keep the Sabbath. And nowadays that's morphed. There's no, I mean, it's nailed down with 100% certainty which day is which, okay? Even during the time of the Romans, when they were changing the days, they wouldn't really change the days. They would just add days to the calendar, but they'd have to pull some days from one month to add to the other day. But the succession of the 7-day week always remained the same. And Tim is with us. Hi Tim. How you doing? And the actual day of the week remained the same. Now, had it changed, there would be confusion the world over because the whole world keeps a 7-day cycle. You can go to Africa. The Zulu nation actually names them 1 through 7. The Native Americans, the Eskimos up north had a 1 through 7 day or week cycle. And it's interesting, if you watch the documentary that Hal Holbrook put out, called The Seventh Day, actually, it states that the 7-day cycle really doesn't line up with anything. Like, for example, if you take a month, for example, there's 12 months in a year. That's the lunar cycle, right? That coincides, and a year is 365 days, with the exception of the leap year. And that's a full rotation around the sun. And a day is one rotation of the earth, from day to day. And so we have all of these different things that tell us what the times are, but what is a week signify? Weeks don't really match up in the months or the lunar cycle. It doesn't really match up with anything. It's just something that God put forth that we are to count the days. And so, and all over the world, this is that way.
Didn't they try to make it a 10-day week?
France did indeed try to make it a 10-day week. And by doing this, they really messed everything up. By the end of the 3.5 years, and you can read about this period of time there in Revelation. We're going to go to Hebrew here in just a second. Why is my app not loading? I'll have to restart it. That's one thing about Bible apps that you will notice. But the one thing with the 7-day week is that, like you were saying, France went to a 10-day week. This was the time, the period of time where they rejected God. They said God is dead. The age of reason was brought about. This is where many believed that the birth of evolution came from. And so the scientists, they had to come up with a way to actually explain creation. And so it wasn't Darwin who came up with the idea of creation. It actually came out of the age of reason there in France. And there was even some predecessors to those the think tank of the day. Mm-hmm. And it traces back pretty far, but it was never really accepted until after Darwin published his book, Origin of Species, which if you read Origin of Species, interestingly enough, it's an extremely racist book. It talks about how man in his progression, because of the different races around the world, you can see the different progression. And of course, he said that the white race was superior to all others. And people that are proponents of evolution today don't like that part of Darwin's writing. So they have excluded that from curriculum in school because, of course, racism like that is not popular today, but it was very popular once upon a time. And I told some of my liberal and atheist friends this, that are very much against racism. And I said, well, you do realize that evolution was born out of racism. And it was because they forgot about the creation of God. The fourth commandment is a memorial of the creation of God. Okay, my app is working again. Let's go to Hebrews 4. And let's see here. We're going to go to Hebrews 4. Okay. And of course, Hebrews 4 is one of those chapters that really kind of nails down the Sabbath for me. It's a very difficult one to get around because it is a New Testament writing, and it really kind of tells us that it points out the sins of past Israel, and it also tells us that there is still a Sabbath to keep for the people of God. Now, historians will that are students of the Bible historians know that the Bible Sabbath didn't change until some 300 years after the death of Christ. Now, this was after they placed Constantine, into
charge
in power when he became the sitting. He became like the first pope, essentially, because he was placed into power as someone who not only controlled Rome now, but also controlled the church. And so he had supreme, authorship over everybody. And we have a couple more verses that Liza has given us as well. So here we go. So we're going to go, for unto us the gospel was, okay, so let us therefore fear, all right, lest a promise being left us of entering into his rest, any of you should seem to come short of it. For unto us was the gospel preached as well unto them, but the word preached did not profit them, but not being mixed with faith in them that heard it. For we which have believed do enter into rest, as he had said, as I have sworn in my wrath, if they shall enter into my rest, although the works were finished from the foundation of the world. It goes back to creation here, and that's in verse 3 of Hebrews chapter 4. And so we have, for he spake in a certain place of the seventh day on this wise, and God did rest the seventh day from all of his works. And in this place again, if ye shall enter into my rest, seeing therefore it remaineth that some must enter therein. Now that's where a lot of people trip up. They say, well, that some is the Jew. Well, and it's really about defining what a Jew is, what an Israelite is, what a Hebrew. Well, Hebrew is a place, right? And if you were born in Hebron, you were considered to be a Hebrew. Just very much like if you were born in America, you would be considered an American. You know, not necessarily your ethnicity, but your location of where you came.
Actually, me and Carrie were born and raised in Springville. Well, not born, but we were raised. So we were Springvillians.
Springvillians, Californicators.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, so this idea of it feels a little bit more comfortable sitting up like this. All right, I got my big belly hanging out. Okay, so in verse 7 again, he limiteth a certain day, saying in David, today after so long a time. Oh, I didn't finish my little. All right, so who is Israel? And that's a question that's asked a lot. Who is actual Israel? Is it the people over there in the literal place? Because Israel is a name by which
Jacob.
God would call.
It started from Jacob.
Yes.
And that was a follower and believer in Jesus. And he said, I'll make all nations great in your name.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and even before him, there was Abraham, which Abraham became the father of a great nation. Now, Jesus himself said that he could raise from the stones seed of Abraham. All right, so, and then later, Paul would state that not all that are born of Israel are Israel.
Well, you saw that in the kings. So there'll be a good king, there'll be a bad king, and his son will be a bad king, right?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Well, that's right. And so, so Israel are those who are faithful to the creed. They're faithful to Jesus, because the lamb that Israel was sacrificing was a symbol of the death of Jesus. Mm-hmm. And so those who are faithful to God are called by his name. And so that would be, yes, the Sabbath is for Israel, essentially, but Israel are those who are faithful to Jesus. And if you're not faithful to Jesus, then there's no other name under heaven by which we can be saved. It's very plain. For if Jesus had given them rest, then would he not afterward have spoken of another day? That's 8. Verse 9, there remaineth therefore a rest to the people of God. Keeps reiterating that fact. For he that is entered into his rest, he also hath ceased from his own works, as God did from his. This is direct language from the 4th commandment. Let us therefore labor into that rest, lest any man fall after the same example of unbelief. Now that's interesting how it says unbelief. And I also find it interesting that many people will say that they, by the Sabbath, by keeping the Sabbath, we're trying to be saved by works. Now that doesn't make sense to me. It never really has made sense, because the Sabbath literally talks about resting from our works. And so how could we be saved from our works by keeping the Sabbath if God has literally told us to rest?
Even
on
Jesus
that day?
on the cross kept the Sabbath. Even Jesus on the cross. And then he was raised, what we around the world, well, especially in America, they all keep the Easter Sunday. Well, some think it's a big bunny rabbit laying eggs, but it's supposed to be the resurrection of Jesus.
Yeah, isn't that funny? All of the significant days,
like Jesus's birth now is
it's Christmas.
Santa.
Satan,
Satan.
Satan Claus, old Saint Nick. Yeah, look up Google old Saint Nick. That's an interesting one because it actually literally says the devil. So, and it's almost certain that Jesus was not born in the month of December.
No.
Because of what we know about, the sheep being out and the shepherds being out. And there's some indications that it definitely wasn't in December. And so
it was in a bad winter, and they were praying for the sun, S-U-N, instead of the sun, S-O-N.
Yes, it's a pagan.
Had nothing to do with Jesus.
No, it's a pagan rite. It goes back. You can read about it there in Isaiah about how they take the tree and they fasten it and they decorate it, and they basically worship it. And so this was an old pagan rite that during the reign of Constantine because at that time, the Romans were pagans. Now, Constantine was very smart in doing this when he joined pagan Rome with Christian Rome, and the statue of Pluto became Peter, and the statue of Athena became the mother of Mary, and et cetera, right? And that's how we have all of these statues in these chapels and the tradition of worshiping them as well, which we're told not to bow down to images. So there's another commandment that's being broke by many Christians today. And God has commanded us not to worship idols, and he's also commanded us to keep the commandments. Now, let me see here. We've got, let's go to Exodus chapter 20. This is actually where the commandments are being read. Now you say, well, that's the Old Testament, right? Well, yes, but did you know Jesus quoted more from Deuteronomy than almost any other book?
Really?
Yeah. Jesus was that's all they had during Jesus' time was the Old Testament. And then the prophets spoke of the first coming. They also spoke of the second coming. So they're very valid even today.
Even speaking of the Ten Commandments, the Lord, the one that made you and I, made the whole universe, made every animal, every creature, everything that grows, he's the one that wrote that. Do you think he made a mistake? When he said, keep the Sabbath day and keep it holy.
No, I don't think he made a mistake. In fact, God wrote it with his own finger. That's the only part of the Bible. Twice he wrote it, didn't he? That's the only part of the Bible that God actually wrote with his own finger. Is that something?
His own finger.
He autographed it. And to say that that's the one part of the Bible that's been done away with sounds like the devil's type of language, because that would be something the devil really doesn't like. The devil doesn't like Jesus. Paul is Old Testament. That's from at God, Yahweh. So not sure what you mean by that. Maybe you could elaborate just a tiny bit there. Okay, so it says here, and Exodus 20 is the first rendition of the Ten Commandments, okay? So we will skip down to verse 8. Remember the Sabbath day. Now, it begins with remember. That's interesting because many people have forgotten it, haven't they?
That's why he put remember.
Yeah. Remember the Sabbath day to keep it holy. 6 days thou shalt labor and do all thy works. By the way, do we have any verses in the New Testament that perhaps, this is a question to you guys, do we have any verses in the New Testament that seem to contradict the seventh-day Sabbath? I know of a few, but do you guys know of any? All right, because we need to look at those as well. It says, 6 days thou shalt labor and do all thy work. Verse 10, but the seventh day is the Sabbath of the Lord thy God. In it thou shalt not do any work, thou, nor thy son, nor thy daughter, nor thy manservant, nor thy maidservant, nor thy cattle, nor thy stranger that is within thy gates. For in 6 days the Lord made heaven and the earth and the sea, that all that in them is, and rested the seventh day. Wherefore the Lord blessed the Sabbath day and hallowed it. All right, and then it goes on to the rest of the commandments. Now, the commandments themselves, Sabbath is eternity, forever rest. There's some truth to that, actually. And if, sorry, I'm having to crane my head over here to read the comments. I usually have my comments here and up on the monitor. First time we're vertical live streaming, so.
We're literally sideways.
Yeah.
We're literally.
Yeah, well, on your monitor, yeah, this one's coming up okay.
Oh.
But yeah, Lisa's having to tilt her head to read the comments. Um, so anyways, so yeah, so that's Exodus 20. And then we also have, I think Liza gave us there Genesis 2:2, and that would be God's original, the original creation of the Sabbath, because God Himself worked 6 days and He rested on the seventh. Did God rest on the seventh because He was tired?
No. It said He sanctified it and hallowed that day for man's rest. He gave it to man to rest. Yeah.
Yeah, He sure did. And this was, and if you go deeper than that, now God Yahweh says Sabbath is eternity, forever rest. Now, if you take the millennial week, you guys have heard this doctrine, perhaps, maybe you haven't, but the millennial week, if you do Bible chronology, you will discover that according to the Bible, the creation of God is only 6,000 years old, almost to the dot now, to this very date. And we're also told that we're going to spend 1,000 years of rest in heaven. And so the 6 days on earth, it tells us literally that a day is as 1,000 years, and 1,000 years is as a day unto the Lord. And so if you put that sort of reasoning behind it, you can come up with this millennial week. And it's 6 days here on earth, the seventh in heaven. And that would be our Sabbath rest. And
Which we're on a precipice of that right now.
We're on the very cusp of that millennial week right now. So, it's important to know that we as believers of the Sabbath day, and I haven't heard anybody refute the Sabbath so far, which would be interesting if any of you guys that are checking in. We've already had 138. It says here people check in on us. We would like to see what you guys think of the Sabbath day, whether or not you guys refute it, whether you agree with it, and if you guys have any verses that would indeed refute what I'm saying. Because modern day Christianity literally says that we can keep any day of the week. That's one of the things they say. But they keep the first day of the week, and that's interesting because that was also a pagan rite. The venerable day of the sun was on the first day of the week, which was the largest celestial body. And Saturn's day was the smallest celestial body, and that was the last day that they would worship on. There was a 7-day worship cycle there. One controversy is that the word Sabbath was not mentioned in Genesis. Exodus 16:26 defines what the seventh day is. Okay, so let's go to Exodus 16:26. All right. I'll bet you I know what that is. That's was that where they were collecting manna?
I didn't bring
And that
the
was
Bible.
and that was on the Sabbath day, and that was prior to 26 there. That was prior to the commandments being given. 6 days ye shall gather it, but on the seventh day, which is the Sabbath, in it there shall be none. And it came to pass that there went out some of the people on the seventh day for to gather the manna, and they found none. And the Lord said unto Moses, how long refuse ye to keep my commandments and my laws? See for that the Lord hath given you the Sabbath. Therefore he giveth you on the 6th day the bread of 2 days. Abide ye every man in his place. So this is a clear indication that the Sabbath was established with Israel prior to the commandments. Okay, so that pretty much does away with the idea that Sabbath wasn't given until Sinai. All right, and I've heard that from some people as well. So, but what say you guys? Is there anybody out there that I know there has to be probably one person listening to this that maybe refutes that the Sabbath day is the actual Sabbath day of the Bible is Saturday, which is, according to us, is the seventh day of the week. Now, the days were numbered by the Romans, were they not? I mean, there's another historical fact that you might not know. You may or may not know. The problem with a lot of Christians now is they're ignorant of much of what the Bible, because the Bible is not being taught like it should be. And so in ancient Rome, they gave the days names. Now, according to their gods, and this goes back to the reason why many Christians keep Sunday or the first day of the week as their day of worship. And then they completely disregard the Sabbath day, because there was, and I'll name them in succession from 1 to 7. There was Sunday, which was the venerable day of the sun. That was the high day. And then there was Moon's Day. That's the second largest, according to the eye, that was the second largest celestial body. Twoden, which was the god of Twoden, Woden, Thor. You guys have heard of Thor. And Friggins and Saturn. Okay. And so that's how the days were reckoned for ancient Rome, and names were given instead of just the Hebrew way of counting days was literally 1 through 7. And many of the tribes of the world still do count their days. Like I said, the Zulu nation in Africa count it from 1 to 7. The natives up in Alaska count it 1 through 7. And many of the Native Americans, once upon a time, it was all 1 through 7. The days were never numbered. And it's interesting that nobody ever lost track of a single day. From all of the tribes of the entire world, there's never been confusion about which day is the first, second, third, fourth, fifth, sixth, seventh. When the Spanish conquistadors came to the New World, and they were in South America, the South Americans, interestingly enough, knew which day was which. Rest in the cross, for it is Sabbath. You can change the names of the days around, but you can't change the numbering. Okay, well, please explain that. Another statement is that we can keep the day, Mark 2:27, 28, and Isaiah 58, 13, 14 refuted that. Yeah, Isaiah, I think, is, correct me if I'm wrong, there in 58, it talks about from one Sabbath to another, from one moon, all flesh shall worship together, talking about after the liberation of the saints here. And so Rodney Smith, Rodney, I'm sorry. You can change the names of the days around, but you can't change the numbering. Sorry, I'm craning my head over like this to actually. Yeah, I see what you're saying here. But so we have Dan Vincent. Hey, Dan, how you doing? And God bless you is GBY. We've learned that over time. And I still have to think about it to this day. So anyways, yeah, so these are all good verses, and we have the words of Jesus. We also have in Revelation where it talks about the final chapter. Now, you guys know what the says when Jesus tells us, he says, behold, I come quickly. Blessed is he that keepeth the sayings of the prophecy of this book. Okay, we're in Revelation, the final chapter here. Seal not the sayings of the prophecy of this book, for the time is at hand. Remember, Daniel was sealed, but this book is not. But a lot of people don't even know how to read the book. Down to 14, it says, blessed are they that do his commandments, that they may have the right to the tree of life and may enter in through the gates into the city. For without, and here's where it kind of gets tricky for some people, because he says, for without are dogs, sorcerers, and whoremongers, and murderers, and idolaters, and whosoever loveth and maketh a lie. So any of those people that would be breaking the commandments would fall into one of those categories. It says, Mike says here, he says, the evening and the morning were the first day, and God rested on the seventh. So there you have it. The Bible clearly defines evening, morning as being what we would call a 24-hour period, right? And so days now I know are reckoned from midnight to midnight, but that's not how God actually set it up. It would be from evening to evening. So in Acts, when you read, and I thought somebody would bring this up by now, in Acts where you read about how upon the first day of the week, it said that they would collect the tithes and the offerings. That would actually be Saturday evening after the church service, after the sun would go down, and they would collect the tithes. It actually strengthens the Sabbath argument instead of making it sound like they were having some kind of communion or whatever on the first day of the week. Now, God Yahweh says, sanctified is justified, purification is salvation. Past morning, AM is after morning. Oh, okay, interesting. Okay, so sanctified is justified, and purification is salvation. Now, that's interesting because we have, what is it? Justification, sanctification, and glorification. And justification is a legal term, just as if I'd never sinned. Yeah, and that's the justification process that Christ gives us upon coming to him. Sanctification is a process where Jesus is removing our sins, and that we more fully day by day give our life unto him. And glorification is a process at the second coming or at the resurrection, whichever we make, where Jesus completely transforms us. And Bova said hi, and so we're talking about the Sabbath here, and we're talking about verses that possibly might refute the seventh-day Sabbath, and we'd like you guys to join in and let us know if there are any that you guys know of, because I certainly don't know of any, but I do know a lot that do tell us that the Sabbath is still very much valid for God's people today. We just got through reading Hebrews 4. We've gotten through reading Revelation there. Jesus went to church or the synagogue every Sabbath day, as was his custom. And so there's lots and lots of evidence in the Bible that...
What always gets me is in the very beginning, on the first creation week, before there was any Jewish people or anyone, he sanctified that day. God did. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. And that's what really stands out. That's what really leaps out in my mind and my eyes. And there was it was a Jewish day. Jesus was Jewish. That's why he kept the day. Well, was there a Jewish day? Was God? At
creation?
Yeah, was God a Jewish man? Or God that created everybody?
Yeah, was Adam Jewish? No. Adam was the father
So,
of all living.
That's the way I kind of look at it. Mm-hmm. And he hallowed and sanctified that day. And that's something to really look into.
It is. And some people, like was mentioned earlier, have refuted that. That those commandments were given to mankind, or even the Sabbath day at that point. And the claim is it wasn't until Sinai, and then that was given to the Jews. None that I know of. The Church Council of Messina changed it, or the Council of Laodicea. I know what you're trying to say. There's another argument that the Sabbath is for the Hebrews. Exodus 20 says the stranger that is within thy gate should keep the Sabbath. Yeah, and again, it goes back to what we were saying about who is actual Israel. Now it was made plain by Paul, because remember the vision even that Peter saw where the sheet came down full of all manner of unclean beasts. Here's something interesting that, and many people have used that to actually clean bacon, to make bacon clean, almost as if Jesus died to make bacon and pigs and rats and mice and bats and buzzards clean. When in fact, the sheet that Peter saw and it came down 3 times, which is significant. And when he woke up from his dream, it said he wondered what the meaning of that vision was. Mm-hmm. And then immediately there was a knock on the door, and he went down, and 3 Gentiles were at his door. And at that time, Israel considered the Gentiles unclean.
They couldn't consort with them.
And even if their shadow landed on them, they were considered unclean. And this was pure racism, okay? Mm-hmm. Back in the day, it's existed for millennia. The devil loves racism. Mm-hmm. And God was literally just telling Peter, look, these people are not common or unclean. So you need to give the gospel to them, to the Greeks, to the Romans, to the Hebrews alike. Everyone needs to hear the gospel, and all who take hold of my covenant shall be called by my name. And so this is a very important part of the puzzle that a lot of people miss out on. And the devil loves to throw out these
Or just stop right there.
Yeah.
Yeah, and not read the next verses.
Yeah, exactly.
It's like, well, what does this mean then when it says this? And then they stop right there.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, that's true. That's true. They don't take it until the definition or the reason behind the vision was given. And so we have Rodney says, thus far we can now conclude that the seventh day are now named the preparation day, the sixth day, and the seventh day, the Sabbath. Good point. Okay, so I said earlier that there were no names given to those days. There was 1 through 7, but then indeed the sixth day of the week was actually called the preparation day.
And it's Sabbath in all languages.
It is.
And that's what's so interesting.
In Spanish, it's sábado. In Russian, it's sabota. Sabota. And so the language tells us where and how, what the name means. If you read a Spanish Bible in the commandments, it really is very, very plain. Mm-hmm. It says the Sabbath day is sábado. And in some versions, I think it's Reina Valera. Correct me if I'm wrong, Liza. I know you're a native Spanish speaker yourself, so you would know that. Messina, the year 1054. Sorry, Dan gave a correction there. And digging deeper with Rick has showed up, the Sabbath is immutable. Change was predicted in the scriptures, but wicked men, not only in Daniel 7:21, but also on Isaiah 24:5. More, the word ordinance, this also refers to God, the Sabbath, okay? So,
and it's become so widespread to keep Sunday. I mean, I grew up with the Sunday, and knowing that that's, when you think of church, it was Sunday, right? Mm-hmm. It was immutable. I mean, that was the day to keep. And it's tradition. It's tradition.
Well, and Lisa, you said a mouthful there. So tradition can be a hard thing to overcome. Let's not understate that part of it, okay?
Well, when you're disputing it like, well, that's what I was taught. Mm. And you don't want to go against your parents. You're like, well, my mom and dad, and you've got this honor for your parents, and you don't realize that you're keeping, or that they may not have known or crossed this hurdle, but now you have to, and you have to make a decision, and use reasoning,
Mm-hmm. Well, that's correct, and let's not understate how hard that is at times to overcome tradition. Let's say your whole family is Methodist or Presbyterian or whatever, Catholic, and they all keep Sunday. And now you've heard the Sabbath truth and you're trying to reconcile that in your head. I should keep Sabbath, but what do? My whole family's going to go against me. This is why Jesus said the statement that he did. And I'm not saying that this is an easy thing to do. And let's not be insensitive to anybody who's struggling with this at this point in time, because Jesus says, unless you hate your brother or your mother or your sister more than, me, in other words, what he's saying is I want you to respect my word more than their word. It's not like we have to hate people, because the Bible does not command us to hate people. But the language literally states that we are to be obedient to Christ before anybody else, including our family.
That's our only decision here. I mean, working and family. I mean, we've not had a very close family. We used our church as our family, as our church family and close family. But our only decision from birth to when we get old is to figure out what we believe on this religious part. And if we're going to keep the Sabbath, if we're going to keep Sunday, if we're going to believe in God at all. And that's what we have one decision to make. Mm. And that's what we're doing. That's the most important.
Lisa, and I'll tell you what, if we look at it in that light, if we look at it like, well, that one decision is everything on this earth. Okay, so we have families, we have jobs, we have friends, we have all these things going on in our life, ambitions and different, but the most important decision is who we choose to be our Lord. And it's, we can choose mammon, the Bible says, money basically, but you can't have them both. You can't have God and the world. Now, we have to live in the world. We have to work. We have to do all of the different things. Church is your body, not the building, God, Yahweh says. I'm really, really got hit between the eyes with something recently that I share on some of my other live streams. We won't get into it very deep here, but what you're saying there is heavy on my heart. Okay, I've always known that the church was the people, and I believe that there's an establishment and an organization, but I'm struggling right now. I'm struggling really bad with this idea, and so we're basically homeless at this point. We have an online gathering, and you guys are the church. We're 2 or 3 are gathered in my name. I think it was Mike Brown that read me that verse out of the Spirit of Prophecy that pretty much nailed it for me, that it's not a building, it's not a cathedral, it's a people. And so, there's more study on my end that needs to be done. I don't know it all, and nor will I for many, many millennia, and neither will you guys either. We're all just in this learning process together. But it says here in verse 12 of the final chapter of Revelation, "Behold, I come quickly, and my reward is with me to give every man according to his works shall be." And there's another one of the arguments. Eliza pointed out here that, the New Testament Christians kept the Sabbath. They're in Acts 15:19 through 22. So there's a good verse that we can go to. Rodney says, "We can agree and accept that the order of the creation on the earth followed the exact same pattern as that of the other worlds. Thus, they keep the Sabbath also."
Yes.
They also say that Sabbath was done away with at the cross. Exodus 12:17 shows that that Jesus' death on the cross abolished the ordinances. So the ordinances, and all of the verses that I was expecting at least one person to come on here and refute the Sabbath truth with us. We've had 185 people check in, but none of them have stayed for very long. But many of the verses that are used in the New Testament that seem to talk about Sabbath days are actually talking about the ordinances, which were also Sabbath days. Which were feast days, by the way, as well. More commonly known as the feast days or the Sabbath days, which were Passover, the Feast of Unleavened Bread, the Feast of the First Fruit, the Feast of Pentecost. All of these things were fulfilled, except for maybe one, at the cross. We're still looking at the Feast of Tabernacles. No, which the
Passover.
No, the Passover was fulfilled Friday when Jesus gave up the ghost.
Oh.
When he died on the cross, that was the fulfillment of Passover. And then that next day was the Feast of Unleavened Bread when Jesus rested in the tomb. Mm-hmm. He was the Word, right? Mm-hmm. And then on the first day of the week was actually the Feast of First Fruits. And then sometime after the ascension into heaven was the Feast of Pentecost, which exactly upon that feast was when the disciples were filled with the Holy Spirit and they spoke in tongues. And so please smash that like button, Dan says. Yes, and I double that. Let's smash that like button and make this video popular. Hopefully more people will see it. Hopefully we'll get some people in here actually disagree with what we're saying. It's not like we're trying to pick a fight either. What we're trying to do is engender a discussion that will lead us to more enlightening truths of the Bible, because many people have been duped. Many fellow brothers and sisters, many Christians out there have been fooled by this idea that the Sabbath is Sunday. And why is this so important nowadays? I just heard Trump talking about a new era that we're going to be entering and how he's going to double down and give everybody, he's going to give the Christians, he didn't say that. He said that he's going to give the Christians what they've never had, what no politician has ever given them before. And he's been better for the Christians than any other president. And so let me see. Bilbo Baggins says when he sat down. Now it's the session when he sat down. Okay. Let's discuss the epistemological relevance of the Homoousian. I don't know what that even means. You're going to have to. All right. So water and blood and flesh as human. Water and blood in flesh as human.
Well, when he hit his side, when he got his side pierced.
Yes. Thank you, Lisa. Sometimes I'm dense. She's the wit of the family. Without her, I don't even know what half people are even saying. Yeah. So water is the spirit before the universe existed. So there was a issue of blood and water that flowed from the side of Jesus. Now, I believe that in the sanctuary service represented the cleansing, number one. Symbolism that was there. Now, and you have to go back to the sanctuary service. You have to go back to the original sanctuary to get some of this stuff. And water is the spirit before the universe was created. So the spirit moved upon the waters, right? Yeah. Well, the waters in Bible prophecy actually mean peoples, multitude, nations, and tongues. You can read that there in Revelation 17 or 18, somewhere around there. I could find it pretty quickly. Homoousios means Jesus is the same substance as God the Father. The central debate of Nicene Creed, Athanasius won the day. That sounds like some Greek stuff there. I'm not sure. Talking about something deep. I'm not too schooled on. Perhaps you can give us a little bit more detail there and make that a little bit clearer to those people that, to the Goyams.
Yeah.
Okay. But so the Sabbath is binding for man today, and it's very important. And again, it says, blessed are they that do his commandments there in verse 14 of chapter 22 of Revelation, that they may have the right to the tree of life. This is for without or dog sorcerers. And by the way, that word sorcerer, look it up. It literally means pharmakia. The word sorcerer has been translated from the word pharmakia in the Greek. Whoremongers, those who practice sexual immorality, right? Murderers. And Jesus told us if we hate our brother without cause, we've committed murder in our heart. Idolaters, those who worship idols, right? And whosoever loveth and maketh a lie. Now, one of those things, idolatry is something that we really need to look into, because idolatry has been practiced by many Christians today, and you wouldn't think so. But if we make anything an idol, whether it be our car, we can even make our spouse an idol if we put it above God. Anything that's put above God in the place of God is become an idol. And one of the things, you remember when the 3 Hebrew boys, when the music played, do you guys know something about music? And do you guys know, all of the Emmy awards, everything's got all this music in it, and the Super Bowl.
This was like really cool music back then. It was like, what's that one song? Sweet Home Alabama. It was like moving music, and they were supposed to what? Kneel down.
Yeah.
Or whatever your era was in music.
Well, I'm gonna tell you, we've got Fernando's joined us. No, Jesus changed it from Saturday to Sunday, Matthew 28:1. Let's look that up, okay? And by the way, welcome to the chat. So let's look that up and let's see what we got here. So Matthew 28, verse 1. And I like it when people make a claim and then they give Bible passages to back it up, okay? Because that's what we're trying to become as Bible Christians, right? So hats off to you there, Fernando, and I hope you're going to stay here for our evaluation of what you've given us, and not just chat and run. So we don't want anybody chatting and running around here. We want them to stick around long enough so that we can have a nice little discussion. So here we go. In the end of the Sabbath, as it began to dawn towards the first day of the week, came Mary Magdalene and the other Mary to see the sepulcher. Now, I'm assuming that you mean that the Sabbath ended, but it's not saying that the Sabbath ended from week to week. It's actually saying as that was the eve of the Sabbath day, the eve of the seventh day is actually what it's talking about. As it began to dawn towards the first day of the week came Mary Magdalene and the other Mary to see the sepulcher. Okay, so that's just a time stamp as to when they showed up. But let's get another verse from you if you got another one. Okay, so 2 Thessalonians 1:8 in the King James Version reads, "In flaming fire taking vengeance on them that know not God and that obey not the gospel of the Lord Jesus Christ." Okay, please elaborate. If you've got something on there that perhaps talks about perhaps the change of the Sabbath is what we're looking for. A Bible verse that would nail that down for us, because we've heard the preachers say it for years, but we need a Bible verse that's really going to nail it down for us, okay? And I'm watching the, we got a date there. The Nicene Creed is a central unifying document of the early church circa 323 A.D. About, what was it, 318 A.D. is when Constantine took power, wasn't it? Or was that the onset of the Sunday law? I forget which. Maybe you guys would know. So my dates aren't always great. So Mr. RK69RK, hopefully you didn't chat and run, because we're going to want another verse from you. And so Harold Camping used to advocate that it ended permanently. Okay, Harold Camping, and we used to listen to him all the time. He used to absolutely drive me nuts, and along with a lot of other Christians. And he predicted the end of the world, I think, twice. Yeah. Incorrectly, of course, I might add, because we're still here. And many people have accused the Seventh-day Adventists for predicting the end of the world, but in fact,
they never set a date.
No, that was the early Advent movement, which is not to be confused with the Seventh-day Adventists. That was began by the Millerite movement, which many of the early founding fathers of the church, of the Seventh-day Adventist church, were part of that, including Ellen White. But Ellen White did not have any visions until later. If you study history, you'll know that it was sometime after the Great Disappointment of 1844 that she would receive her first vision as a young girl. So we've got how many people we got on the chat? We've got 215 people checked in, and only 12 are on now. So you guys can't be chatting and running. If you're going to make an argument, you have to actually frame that argument and not just give us some random verse that may seem like a real mic drop or a slam dunk, because so far I haven't really heard nothing. And I'm not here to taunt or to tease or to start some ugly debate. I'm actually here to discuss with fellow brothers and sisters about the truth of the Sabbath day, because I want to unify people in this and tell as many people as possible, because in fact, they are setting up a Sunday law which will become universal, which everybody's going to be required to keep. And they're going to be compelled to keep this day of worship. And what's wrong with Sunday?
Order.
They're going to try and do the one world order. They're going to definitely do a universal day of rest. Now, I was just watching Putin talk on a press conference, if you can call it that. In Russia, they have their own name for it. But now Putin himself was saying that they need to unify in Christianity. Their unity needs to remain solid, and they need solidarity amongst the Christian faith in Russia, because they believe that they're correct in what they're doing, right? Of course they do. And they don't believe the propaganda of the West that's being fed to them 24/7. But this, to worship on the Saturday? Yes. Yes, we believe that God has commanded us to keep the seventh day Sabbath, Saturday, holy. Okay, what we call Saturday. Now, as I pointed out earlier, the Roman calendar, and don't be chatting and running on us either. You got to hang out just for a few seconds and come up. You got to give us a Bible verse if you don't believe it's on Saturday, okay? Fernando says, yes, it was not the literal in May 21st, 2011, but it was the spiritual end of God's program of salvation. Okay. So Rodney says, Dawn directs our attention to at least 12 hours after the Sabbath ended. And yeah, that's right. So that verse that we had earlier, of, what was it, Matthew or something? Leviticus 26. Here we go. Leviticus 26:29. We just looked up Did we look up a Leviticus? No, we looked up a Deuteronomy. Okay, Leviticus 26. All right. Want to read it aloud? Yes, sir. 26:29. Let's read that aloud. Thank you guys for not chatting and dashing. We're not going to have no chat and dashes here, okay? So you guys have to hang out for the answer. 26:29, Leviticus. All right? So here we go. We're going to read it. And ye shall eat the flesh of your sons and your daughters, and ye shall, oh, brother. All right, so this is a judgment that God has given Israel if they are not faithful to God. All right, this is not a command that God is giving them. He says, if you depart, and maybe this is what you mean by this, okay? But some people antagonize with these scriptures, okay? I'm hoping that's not your angle here. But what God is saying is, if you leave my side, if you don't keep my commandments and my statutes and my laws, this will be your end result, that you will eat the flesh of your sons and your daughters. Now, this is what the heathen are doing right now.
Right now. Yeah.
Right now, that's what's taking place. So this is prophetic. This is prophetic. All right. So here. Is God good for that? No. For the context, he did not do that. Well, let's read context, okay? And if you will not walk for all this, hearken unto me, but walk contrary to me, then I will walk contrary unto you also in fury, and even I will chastise you 7 times for your sins, and ye shall eat the flesh of your sons and the flesh of your daughters, and ye shall eat. And I will destroy your high places and cut down your images and cast your You know what they did on the high places? They were offering their sons and their daughters in the high places, but he just said he's going to cast those down. So he's not advocating to eat your sons and your daughters. Yeah. That's what the elite, that's what the wicked do. That's what the devil worshipers do. Nowhere has a Christian ever eaten his son or his daughter. You're not going to find it. I mean, you thought you were clever there. You thought you had me there, but you didn't. Gospel of John 8:58, before Abraham was, I am. The Gospel of John 10:30, and I and the Father are one. These look like good verses. Let's look at them. Read it again. Okay, well, you want me to, well, we're here. Let's read it again. Let's back up a little bit more and get the context. All right. So I will bring a sword upon you that shall avenge the quarrel of my covenant. And when ye are gathered together within your cities, I will send the pestilence among you, and ye shall be delivered into the hand of the enemy. That's verse 25. And then it goes on and it gives the exactly what I said, okay? And it says in verse 34, then shall the land enjoy her Sabbaths as long as it lieth desolate, and ye be in your enemy's land. Even then shall the land rest and enjoy her Sabbath. As long as it lieth desolate, it shall rest, because it did not rest in your Sabbath when ye dwelt upon it. In other words, God is saying that when you are in captivity, when I've sent you to Babylon, and you're eating the flesh of your sons and your daughters, because that's what they did in Babylon. That's what they're doing in modern day. He's literally telling them, look.
You're not going to rest. You're not going to keep the statutes. You're not going to reap anything.
Well, they're not, but the land which they possessed once upon a time will enjoy a Sabbath. In other words, no crops will be grown on that. Yep. There's not going to be anything done by his people. Okay? So let's read it again. Let's go to the verse over here. I was going to hit John 8:58. So, I mean, I appreciate what you're trying to do there, Antona. But, yeah, that was a fail. I'm sorry. I'm trying to be nice about it. But, you get these people try to rage bait you with these. They think they've gotten clever little verses for you, but they're not. They're not clever at all. God doesn't change. He's the same yesterday, today, and forevermore. And he's not commanding his children to do those horrible things. He's just saying, if you depart from me, this is your end. Mm-hmm. And literally, we see that in the halls of Congress. We see this. There was actually a task force in Great Britain that would counsel people that came out of devil worship and people who consumed the flesh of children. This is something that the devil does, and this is the result of leaving God's side. That's all it's saying. I don't see anything else in it, really. I'm sorry. All right. Whoopsie daisy. I got to scroll here. Oh, shucks. Here we go. All right. So, and I'm sorry if I'm offending you there, but that was your attempt to offend me. 8:58. You know, the Bible says what it says, and it makes no apologies. I'm sorry, I'm having trouble here. John 8:58. Please don't let me forget that one. John 8:58. John 8:58. Let's read it. All right. Let's give everybody a chance here. Whoops. All right. So 8:58. Jesus said unto them, Verily, verily, I say unto you, before Abraham was, I am. That's a good verse. Yeah, you actually quoted that, didn't you? Okay, so I didn't have to really speculate what you meant by that. All right, so we have God's Sabbath day is today. Hallelujah. Yes, we're on the eve of the Sabbath now here in Montana. No, you guys can't chat and run either, okay? No chat and dash in here. 26 is prophesying of what happened during the siege, 2 Kings 6:24 and 31. Thank you, Liza. And they were eating their children there, if I recall right, if that's the one I'm thinking of. I have no offense. Thank you, Antona. Thank you for that. I appreciate you. You're hanging in there. You haven't chat and dash, so that means you're an individual of substance. Sin, it is lawlessness, so we have to obey God's law, period. What would happen, correct? I'm still here. There you go. God made them do it. No, God didn't make anybody do that. You know, the language in the Bible sometimes would have you to think that, but God doesn't make people eat their own children. That's a choice that God has given mankind to become sinful and horrible and do horrible things, but that's not God doing them. And so God is the redeemer of mankind. He has actually redeemed us of those practices. He's pulled us out of Babylon. You know, there's modern day Babylon, if you can read it there in Revelation. And he talks about a modern day Babylon and what Babylon has done, okay? Boss Mass says, sin, it is lawlessness, so we have to obey God's law, period. Yeah, you know, God's law is a law of liberty. If you read it, it says, thou shalt do no murder. Well, if we eat our sons and daughters, that's murder, okay? The law says no murder. All right, Babylon is Baal, different language. Thank you. Susie M. has joined us. Actually, we are now in the beginning of the first day. Yeah, that's correct. It's evening. So want to look at another one? Give it to me. Yes, absolutely, Antona. Am I saying that right? Matthew 5:17 through 20. Thank you. Matthew 5. Okay, Matthew 5 here. Let's go to it, guys. We are cooking with gas now, right? 17 through 20. Let's read it. Think that I have not come to destroy the law or the prophets. I am not come to destroy, but to fulfill. Okay? For verily I say unto you, till heaven and earth pass away, not one jot or tittle. You know your Bible. I appreciate you. John Anton is fine, sir. Thank you. Yes, sir. Till heaven and earth pass away, one jot or tittle shall in no wise pass from the law till all be fulfilled. Whosoever therefore shall break the least of these commandments and teach men to do so, he shall be called the least in the kingdom of heaven. But whosoever shall do and teach them, the same shall be called great in the kingdom of heaven. Okay, 2 more verses here. For I say unto you that except your righteousness shall exceed the righteousness of the scribes and the Pharisees, you shall in no case enter into the kingdom of heaven. You have heard it said that by them of old, thou shalt not kill, and whosoever shall kill shall be in danger of judgment. But I say unto you that whoever is angry with his brother without a cause shall be in danger of the judgment. Okay, I hope I read what you were Reformation has joined us. What is sin? Sin is the transgression of the law. 1 John 3:4. If the law and the commandments didn't exist at creation, then Adam and Eve didn't exist. Okay, so fallen for the Muslims and Islam's religion. Okay, and that's another topic that I would love to discuss. You know, sometime. Unless your righteousness, you cannot enter heaven. Correct. That means all 613 laws are still active. Well, to your point, okay, there was a lot of laws. There was the, and I'm glad you brought that up. Nevertheless, let me read this from Reformation first. Nevertheless, death reigned from Adam to Moses, even over them that had not sinned after the similitude of Adam's transgression, who is the figure of him that was to come. Romans 5:14. Okay, so to your point, there was lots of laws. There was the ceremonial laws, right? The laws of like we mentioned before, the Sabbath laws or the Sabbath days, which included Passover, first fruits, the unleavened bread, Pentecost, the law of trumpet, or the Feast of Trumpets, and et cetera, et cetera. Some people here would know them better than me. And then there was the dietary laws. There was the the laws that dealt with civil authorities, right? If a man gougeth out an eye, his eye is also required. Now, Jesus said, you have heard of old, an eye for an eye and a tooth for a tooth, thou shalt not. But if a man strikes you on the right cheek, turn to him also the left. He wasn't abolishing the law when he said that. He was reestablishing what the meaning of the law was. In other words, be quick to forgive your brother, okay, for offense. But that doesn't get your brother off the hook of the civil authorities. Now, you've seen people where they've had their children murdered and they forgive the murderer who's done that. But the murderer still goes to jail and still suffers the penalty of the law. Okay? That's all that Jesus was saying here. Okay. Antona says, okay, I'm late. I'm here. Yahoo. Monique. Nope, that's not true. There's just laws. Don't add to or take away. Remember, not one jot or tittle of the law shall pass. There's some argument as to what laws he's talking about. He's certainly not talking about the ceremonial laws. I promise you that. It's just the laws, and Jesus doesn't say that. Every moving thing. Yeah, but you have to take everything into context. Later on, Paul would elaborate on that law that Jesus was talking about, which law. And of course, the Israel was commanded to circumcise themselves, and Paul said that circumcision is nothing, right? That there's no longer Jew nor Greek, because some of those were fulfilled at the cross, right? And under the theocracy, there was other laws that God had commanded to keep under the theocracy, like the death if someone broke the Sabbath. Well, we don't do that stuff anymore because we're not under a theocracy anymore. We've given that up. Every moving thing that liveth shall be meat for you, and even the green herb have I given you all things, okay? So I love bacon. Well, boy, oh boy, have I got a mouthful for you. But we're not talking about bacon and clean and unclean foods here, but we will. But we already did mention the Acts there, where it was talking about the sheet that came down and descended unto Peter 3 times, and it says, "Arise, Peter, kill and eat." Fulfillment does not mean abolish. No, it doesn't. You're correct on that. Paul says that they are to abolish, but he is a heretic. Okay, well, whatever. Bless you from Australia, says Philip. Well, bless you, Philip. Paul said that if you're circumcised, then Jesus is no use to you. Not sure if that's what it says. Moses' law are written into your hearts. You know the right from wrong. That's our conscience speaking to us, okay? God, when he writes our laws in our hearts and places upon our mind, that is our conscience speaking to us. We all seem to know what I got the hiccups all of a sudden, what right and wrong is. We also know that there were more than just the 10 because of Genesis 26:5. Because that Abraham obeyed my voice and kept my charge, my commandments, my statutes, and my laws. And there you go again. That's another example. Like one of the statutes was indeed, to bury your excrement. Another one would be, quarantine. I always laugh when people talk about quarantine and they say, well, we're people of science. Religious people don't believe in quarantine. Well, the Bible literally taught quarantine. They didn't know what quarantine was until God says you're just separate your sick from your healthy, and this was a principle that dates way back to ancient Israel. So those are still practiced.
They had dumps out of the town. They had rubbish and stuff like that.
Yes, Lisa, you are correct.
Dung heaps.
Dung heaps, You would go from without the city to do your business, to dump your refuse, all of the things that were considered that we take for granted nowadays. We really do.
In England, they used to have these boxes, and they would use the bathroom, and it would fall into the streets. And that's pretty gross.
Yeah, that's true.
Mm-hmm.
It says, it does say to separate the sick from healthy, yes, but that was common knowledge during the day. No, it wasn't. It's not common knowledge today. So, no, it wasn't. And
The Black Plague, I was watching a documentary. They were they're close friends or relatives and neighbors. I mean, they're just like in these tiny dwellings. They were telling on each other, and they were locking the people with the chain and everything.
mm-hmm.
And then eventually, when they didn't hear no more life in there, they'd open the door up. It was really terrible.
That's correct.
And so neighbors were squilling on neighbors. It's going to happen again.
Yeah. Oh, good. That's a good point, though. Okay, so you can't have order without rules and laws. True. We're on the same page here. We're not really arguing anything here.
No.
The statutes and laws weren't to be burdened, but to help us overall. That's agreed. 100% agreed there. Roman medical books and Greek medical books do too. But the problem there is it was borrowed from. This was all borrowed. When the wise men came in. It says, I live in Melbourne, Victoria. We were the most locked down city on earth.
Oh, wow.
Now, when Babylon took on the wise men, they took them on to learn things. That was their idea of learn military might, and not only that, but the wisdom that the other nations had before them, and they were to add to their wisdom. The Hebrew boys, the Hebrew worthies there, they gave King Nebuchadnezzar wisdom according to all the things that God had taught them. And they were considered the wisest of them all.
And why? Because God was with them. Because they were keeping the statutes of God. They were actually, doing everything health-wise and mentally wise and everything they could to be close to God. And that's why these young men were able to teach.
Okay, and
Nebuchadnezzar.
then Antona is asking me to read Galatians 5:2, and I'm assuming that's okay. So behold, I Paul say unto you that if you be circumcised, Christ shall profit you nothing. Okay, for I testify again to every man that is circumcised that he is a debtor to do the whole law. Christ has become of no effect unto you. Whosoever of you are justified by the law, ye are fallen from grace. Which law is it talking about? We're talking about the law, the sacrificial law. And circumcision, I've mentioned many times, and you probably haven't heard my rendition of it. English Standard Version. No, I'm reading King James. I'm pretty sure it's King James. But the circumcision was given after Abraham had a son with his concubine, right? And then later Sarah would bear a son, the son of promise, not the son of flesh, because it was Sarah's idea that Abraham have a son with Hagar, and that was not God's plan. And so they used the occasion of the flesh to fulfill God's commandment to them to have a son, because Sarah was barren, as you know. But Sarah would later have a son, and then God would command Abraham to be circumcised as a sign that the Son of promise, Jesus Christ, would not come by the will of man, not by the flesh, the outward act of the flesh, because Mary was a virgin, okay? And so every man that was born according to the faith that believed Jesus would come, they would circumcise themselves as an outward show to say, I believe personally that Jesus will not come by the will of man. I cut my flesh off to show it as an outward sign. After Jesus came, he was the fulfillment of that. And that's all Paul is literally saying there.
We're circumcised in spirit now.
The heart has always needed that circumcision. In other words, what Jesus is saying there, it's a typology. He's saying literally, your heart you need to believe that Jesus is the one who can save. That's literally what that means. Because they would circumcise themselves in the flesh, and they go, see, I'm circumcised, I'm a son of Abraham. No, not unless there was faith in there, because they would sacrifice animals, and God says the blood of goats and the blood of bulls and the blood of lambs I would not.
People do it all the time. They get baptized and they don't really mean it, or they're too young, or they fall, and you know what I mean. They have to rebaptize when their heart is more when their mind is more in tune to God's word.
Yeah, that's right. Ceremonial laws are not the Ten Commandments, Monique says. Susie says, Malachi 4:4, remember ye the law of Moses, my servant. We just read that last night, which I commanded unto him in Horeb for all of Israel with the statutes and the judgments. Okay. Greece predates Christianity. Technically, yeah, it does, technically. And ceremonial law, that's why I switched to a Hebrew translation, New Revised Standard Version, okay. Mark 10:27, Jesus looking upon saith, with man this is impossible, but not with God, for with God all things are possible. And I love that verse, Mark 10:27 there. KJV was translated from Greek. The King James Version was translated from Greek, yes. I know that's another reason why Paul is a heretic. Oh, okay. Well, we don't have to use Paul to prove anything. I mean, you can prove whatever you want to prove outside of Paul's writings. It's all there in the Old Testament, basically. KJV uses the Tectus Receptus. Okay, Paul wasn't a heretic, but his writings take the long way around Robin Hood's barn to get to the point, which can sometimes be obscured because of the explanation. I love that that terminology, that Reformation. Thank you. Rajan has joined us. I'm butchering names tonight. That's what I do. I just sit here and butcher names, so I do apologize for that. So again, guys, if you guys are joining us, you guys can't chat and dash. There's no chat and dashing here. You guys have to chat and wait for the answers. So now Reformation says we must remember that Paul was one of the Pharisees who took great pride in their education and used a higher level intellect compared to the general population. He was slow to unlearn that skill. And hence the reasons why we have the writings of Paul. Now, they're very philosophical, in my opinion, because he goes around that barn and, it takes a long way around, if you will. But he does make good points. And he does talk about quite a lot about what the ceremonial laws meant at the time and what they were actually for. Nobody's given me a verse from Galatians yet, so I'm just going to assume that you guys don't know about that one. Now, all I'm doing with Paul is saying he's heretic. I'm not saying follow him. Christian currently do follow Paul, though. Well, the problem, Antona, with Paul is Christians will use his writings to somehow contradict everything else from beginning to end that the Bible tells us. And Peter's warned us. He says, look, some have read Paul's writing to their own hurt and say hi, amen. Hey, no chatting and dashing, Michelle. You got to hang out for a little while, okay? So I've never heard of that before, Antona. There is no categories of laws. They are just the laws, okay? Well, there were, and the Bible makes a distinction. There's testimonies. There's the Ten Commandment laws. There's the health laws. There's, they're all there. And if you remember, some of those laws were put into a book, right? In the side of the ark, of which the Ten Commandments were placed in, the book was placed on the side of the ark, whereas the Ten Commandments were placed in the center of the ark. I think that's in Deuteronomy 31. We'll get the verse here in just a second on the chat. But there was a distinction between the law of Moses and the Ten Commandment law, and very specifically so because God knew that the Ten Commandment laws especially would fall under attack. Now, the health laws and all those other things we still follow to this day, including, the abstinent from pig, like somebody had mentioned that they like bacon. And that's okay. I think that's the ignorance of modern Christianity today. How you doing over there, Lisa? You look a little tired. If we came off of you woke up from a nap.
I did, yeah.
Yeah.
I'm not tired. It's only 8. But it seems like it's real late because we still have the winter darkness here.
Mm-hmm.
But can you believe all the storms that are happening in the west over there?
The east?
The east, I mean.
Yeah, the southeast is crazy.
Southeast.
It's becoming quite serious, I know.
9 inches, white out.
Yeah, Trish in Progress had mentioned that there was some pretty heavy storm over there in Connecticut. I know this storm goes, my brother who lives in Pennsylvania, Ohio. There's Kentucky, Tennessee. I think they're out of power in a lot of places in Tennessee, and so they've had some pretty serious problems. But hey, folks, we're going to end this live stream, and I just want to thank everybody who's taken part of it.
Thank you very much.
And we just want to welcome the new followers on this channel, and we also want to welcome anybody who stayed with us in the chat. And God bless you. God bless you guys. Look, we like to discuss here. It's not us against you. And the thing of God's truth is that it's available to us all. And I think if more people were to sit down and have a good, honest, good-hearted, discussion like adults, that we could arrive at more truth and just instead of just hurling insults at one another. And that's what we've tried to do here at Prophecy Montana. So we do thank you guys so much for your guys' effort and your participation. And Dr. Richard says, God bless you. And God bless you, Dr. Richard. And Susie says, circumcision is kind of like the early form of baptism. Indeed, it was. Mm-hmm. And, of course, their passage through the love you all. God bless you all. You guys are going to find, if you join this channel, that we have some of the friendliest chat.
Wonderful people.
On the planet. Mm-hmm. Absolutely on the planet. And we do not mind when our ideologies get challenged. In fact, we welcome it. And that was the purpose of this video today. So welcome, everybody. Welcome. And we thank God for you guys. And we ask that God will abundantly bless you guys more than you guys could receive. Amen. And we will bid you guys good night and a welcome to the first day of the week as well. So this is a great way to welcome in the first day of the week. So God bless you guys. We'll see you guys very, very soon. Thank you very much. And now I have to learn how to end this live stream. This is a little bit different than the other one. So okay, hang on. Not yet. Please let me come up sometimes. Yeah, come on up. You're very much invited, Antona. And you can catch us at prophecymontana@gmail.com. Please email me and contact me for any further information and further discussion. And okay. All right. Now I'm out. This time for good. So